Well, welcome once again to the L&D Ninja podcast. I'm your host, Reggie Padin, and I am so glad that you are here with us for this special podcast. I have my dear good friend, Jordan Freda. He is the co-founder of a huge marketing firm, Giant Propeller. They deal with all sorts of great companies who are up and coming. And I thought it would be a good time to bring him along and talk to us about branding and marketing and all the stuff that you are interested in. I know I'm interested in it, and get his insight into what it's all about, what the trends are, what he sees down the future. And so, Jordan, I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Reggie. I appreciate it. I like that I'm the special guest. That makes me feel very welcome.
Well, it's the first time, Jordan, that I'm recording in here. Usually I do everything through Zoom. So right. You're the first one.
That's right. You were like, do you want to do it in person or on Zoom?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, if in person's an option, why would I ever want to be on Zoom again in my life? Yeah.
Well, after a couple of years of being behind a screen, it's nice to connect with people again.
Exactly, man. I feel like I was living my life in four walls. I feel like I was Zoom. So it's good to be back. Yeah. Thanks for having me over.
Well, it's my pleasure, Jordan. I think very highly of you and the work that you do. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity, Jordan, for you to, just join us. The audience that is joining us is usually people who are very good at what they do in learning and development.
Okay.
They may be entrepreneurial in some sense, or they may be thinking about switching their careers to learning and development. But we may not be as skilled in marketing and branding and personal branding and personal marketing. So that's why I thought that you would be a good guest to have on the show.
Great. Well, yeah, I think I guess I could give you a little bit of background on myself for your viewers and listeners, and maybe we can start there. And
absolutely.
If you want to, expand upon that, we'll do it. So yeah, I'm Jordan, co-founder and chief growth officer at Giant Propeller. We started this business, my partner Mike and I, who's our CEO. We started 7 years ago in Los Angeles with I guess you could say a pretty simple, but at the same time complex vision. We were both coming from backgrounds in Hollywood feature filmmaking and commercial production, as well as visual effects. So I had a previous company that was a visual effects shop, which means special effects for Hollywood movies and for commercials, as well as doing production on commercials. And this is back in around 2008, I want to say 2009. And while we were doing this, it was successful in its own right. We were working on some of the biggest movies of the time.
Like what? Can you mention a few?
For sure. This is actually how I met my partner, because at one point in time, my current partner. He became my biggest client. We were working on Captain America, Thor, Harry Potter, Smurfs, The Green Hornet, a lot of movies that are pretty large and well known. But while working on that, something interesting sort of started happening. And I want to set up the background of my company now, because I think it's important to understand. So this was located in Silicon Valley. We had a small office in San Francisco and then a small office in San Mateo, which is what I'm calling Silicon Valley, because it's kind of an all-encompassing term of the area. And we would, the iPhone finally had apps. I think that was in 2010 maybe, when your iPhone could do something more than just calling and texting someone. And we started getting a lot of phone calls, because if you were on Google at the time, as a new founder, a new entrepreneur, and you search, I need a video for my company, or get a brand video made, we would come up organically. It wasn't engineered that way, it just kind of was how it went. And essentially we started getting a lot of young founders or new founders of these new, in many cases, fully funded startups, because this was the tech craze in Silicon Valley, the startup era, I guess. And they would call and they would say, hey, we saw that you guys are working on these large movies. We saw that you guys are doing commercials for really big companies. Like we were working at my company, we did some commercials for Target, Samsung. I directed a couple commercials for Samsung, Dell, you name it. We were working with a lot of really prolific tech companies and other companies at the time. And they thought that because we were the ones creating a commercial, that we were doing everything related to marketing. In their mind, it was like a commercial is marketing. Making a video, there's this misconception, and maybe even some people still have this misconception, that just by making a video is what your brand needs to be successful.
Right.
And it's well, making a video is fantastic in terms of as a communication device or platform, but if nobody watches it, who cares? Why'd you make the video in the first place, right? But again, this was we're fast forwarding, 15 years later or something, right? So I started getting a bunch of those calls, and for a while I was like, no, sorry, we only make the video. So if you want a video, great. But they were asking, can you build our website? Can you engineer a go-to-market strategy? Can you make our logo? Can you can you run email campaigns, social media campaigns? Can you do all this for us as marketers? Because they thought, surely you make the commercial, you do it all. So after, turning down enough people, I was like, okay, I got to get my entrepreneurial brain in gear, because I'm turning away people that are interested.
Sure.
And at that current time, I had a 120 person staff.
Wow. And it was just for video production.
It was for special effects on movies and video production on commercials.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was.
So no marketing at that point.
No marketing beyond thinking about the strategy for videos and telling stories. So an element of marketing, nothing beyond that.
Got it.
And of course, we were coding our own websites, and we had the skills, we just weren't really putting them out there in the world, right? And so at a certain point, I was like, well, we should really try to figure out how to do this, right? Because a lot of people are calling and they're interested, and we're a smart group of people. The things we're doing are very, very difficult, and we've got the capacity to figure this out.
Sure.
So I carved out a group of 12 people, 12 of us, and we started focusing and, started taking those calls. And we worked with some great startups at the time. One of them was a footwear brand that was well known, that then after working with us, we dramatically increased their sales, built out the entire brand presence. I was a pretty integral part in that. They were acquired later on. Another one was what was at the time one of Shark Tank's biggest success stories. So we had some cool kind of clientele coming in, and we were learning all the while doing.
Sure.
And then what was interesting was there was a sort of a second layer of request or conversation that made me realize maybe this is the future direction of this business, which it wasn't. I started Giant Propeller outside of that business later, but which was, they would all say the same thing, right, Reggie? They would say we called large advertising agencies, and either they're way too expensive and we just simply can't afford to work with them, or they don't understand where we are as a business. They don't understand how to get from point A to point B to point C. They're only able to work with large, already established multinational brands, right?
Sure.
These large agencies are working with brands like Coca-Cola, right? They're doing facilitating the marketing and advertising of Coca-Cola. That's a big deal.
That's big, yeah.
And then what would happen was sometimes those brands, if they were backed by investors, would go to those larger agencies, and then the way they felt afterwards was they got totally screwed because they would engage in something very expensive, but it wasn't actually what they needed to get to the next step. Maybe that would have worked if they were 25 steps ahead or 30 steps ahead. So that was a common sort of theme. The other theme was, we've worked with freelancers. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're affordable, sometimes they're not.
Right.
And then sometimes when they're great, or even when they're bad, they'll just disappear randomly because they're on vacation in Costa Rica or Bali or something, or they're juggling the time of multiple clients, and then deadlines get missed and you can't get a hold of them. So those were kind of things that I was hearing. And then the final bit of that was, at that time, there were a few shops that were specializing in an area, right? You might have a company that was on the brink or on the brink or bleeding edge of social media marketing, right? Because social media back then in 2010 or whatever wasn't as advanced as it is now.
Not, yeah.
I mean, we were barely,
Probably about Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook and barely.
YouTube,
Yeah, and YouTube. So the other thing, that there would be companies that would just do Facebook or just do this or just do that. And these businesses were but we really just want to go to a place that can just handle it so we don't have to talk to so many people.
Right.
So in my mind, I was like, oh, that's an interesting concept. Was trying to solve for it. Anyway, I saw that as the future. My business partner at that business at the time didn't agree. He was like, Jordy, why are you working on, I know you're laughing because your dog and I share the same.
I'm not laughing because of that.
You should tell people about that. But actually, we should, before I transition the story, we should talk about how we met and your dog.
That's fine.
Yeah. But, yeah.
So go ahead. So it looks like you were, the need out there was either these marketing companies were doing a one-size-fits-all approach, or the freelance, which were, hit or miss, right? Is that what you were? And so there was definitely a need for a company like yours to Well, although you didn't have a company, at that point,
I saw that. I saw that need.
And so your partner didn't agree that was the direction.
My partner at the time, he was like triple my age. I won't. I'll say that he's a good person. Anyway.
Be careful because I'm probably triple your age too. So you
I don't think so, man. Ultimately, I exited that company.
Yeah.
Because we weren't able to sort of see eye to eye on what the future vision was. And then I moved to Los Angeles and met up with Mike, who's my partner now, who was my biggest client then. Mike has a very successful track record working in production and operations and has a really good background understanding finance and how to scale businesses. And he saw what I was attempting to do and was like, hey, what if we combined our forces? Like you've got your creative, strategic abilities, your ability to like present a vision really well and get people on board, and he had all these skills that I didn't have. So he was like, what if we teamed up for what this new vision is, which is working with, at the time, startups. And the concept was startups at first, helping startups advance themselves. And then we kind of, once we started working on it for the first year or so, we moved it into emerging brands, which is like a term that I think we defined. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we were the first people saying it, and then a lot of the
sort
language,
of the edgy, up and coming,
you got
trendy.
Exactly, you got it. Like you're an emerging brand. You have a good idea. You have a good product. You're entering the market. A lot of brands can be considered emerging brands, in my opinion. And so we kind of opened that up a bit more. And so now, fast forward, through the kinks of any good startup. We positioned ourselves as a fractional marketing department. So we kind of
say more about that, because
So fractional marketing department. So it's a new term. You might be familiar with the term fractional CFO, Chief Financial Officer, or fractional CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. And all that means is that you're sharing that resource with other companies, right? Like you might not need a full-time CFO, but you could use a quarter-time CFO, right? So what our company, Giant Propeller, is we are a marketing department filled with marketing experts that cover every single brand growth need out there, and we fractionally assign ourselves to clients.
So you become their internal marketing operation.
Yeah, we like to say that we can either become your entire marketing department, which is great for businesses that are on the rise, who might be like anywhere from 3 to 15 employees, or we can say we can become an extension of your existing one. So for businesses that might be, usual size, 15 employees and up, they usually have some components of marketing in-house, but they're looking to expand and tap into these different skill sets that we have.
It's funny that you should mention that, because after you and I met and you explained to me over coffee your business. I'm a new startup as well, and I was thinking more, learning management systems and pushing that. But when I heard you describe what you did, the light bulb went off on me, and it was like, okay, maybe my company, my small company, can become. I wasn't using the term fractional, but it could become the fractional L&D operation for these companies that every company needs it, but probably they don't want to, spend the big bucks yet to hire like a full-time person to do this. So I got that, I got that from you, and I thank you for sharing that with me. So, was it an easy transition? I mean, now that you had the vision for what you wanted for your company, you had a partner, which, by the way, it's business 101. If you don't have the skill set to do everything within the business, it's great to partner up with other people that are stronger than you in those areas.
Well, I'll say, I think we took that to we took what you just said to the ultimate truth, which was at the beginning of the company, I was the CEO, probably I think for the first 2 years, and he was the COO, but we were always co-founders, right? And then over time, we kind of started realizing whose skills were where, and then we became co-CEOs for about 2 years. And then we ultimately had the realization that, why don't, Mike, you're much better at being the CEO. I'm much better at these things.
Yeah. Was it hard for you?
Was it hard for me? I think it was hard. It was more ego hard than realistically hard, because the things that we were doing were already the same things we would be doing. It was just officially making that known.
Yeah.
But I think that in my mind, there was no better person to I mean, obviously, there was no better person in terms of he's already doing that. He's already, in my mind, he was already like the CEO, right?
Yeah,
like he was doing all the CEO duties and doing them really great.
Which frees you up to do what you're good at and what you really are passionate about, right? Which is the creative side, right?
Yeah, like the creative side and like client vision. Shoot, I just hit your mic. And like talking to people like yourself and meeting different businesses and like putting myself in their shoes for a minute to figure out, well, how do we get you from point A to point B to point C.
Sure.
And so like that is great. And so I'm very happy with how that played out.
Yeah.
I think like anybody, of course, it took an ego hit from a title, but like what is a title? I mean, I think if you look at what Elon Musk's title is, have you heard about this?
Well, he has some crazy
on his SEC filing, I think it is for Tesla.
Yeah, what is it?
His title is Techno King.
Yeah,
because he didn't want to be called CEO. I was like, I don't care about
So he says that those titles don't matter, which is true. It's usually it's either president and director at the.
Anyway, so that's all just like identifying what you're good at, and that's what a fractional marketing department helps a business like yours, for example, is like by working with us, you're freeing up your time to refocus. You're freeing up your department's time to refocus on what they truly need to be focused on.
Yeah.
And then obviously collaborating. Yeah.
So tell me, was it tough to? It looks like you already had some, some clients already lined up. So was it tough for you to make that transition? I mean, to leave the other.
My previous company, you mean, to make Giant Propeller?
And by the way, where did you come up with that name, Giant Propeller? Yeah, that's an interesting name.
I'll tell you about the name. There's a PR version of that story and there's a real version of that story. Which one do you want?
Which one's the most entertaining?
The real version.
Okay, so all right, sure.
The PR version is just we propel brands. But the real version of that story is a gentleman named Ben Lamb, who was the art director at my previous company. When I left that company, he also left that company. We've been working together hand in hand on creative visions for a very long time. And I was like, this was even before Mike and I had, well, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Anyway, Mike and I were already partnered up and we were trying to we were partnered up and we were trying to name the company. And I was like going to fly Ben from San Francisco to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Because the objective was, hey bro, let's brainstorm a name for the company and then let's do a bunch of logos. Because like, obviously when you start a company, you have to start with a logo, right?
Yeah.
That might not be the best actual strategic way. Yeah. But anyway, so at the time, I was just like, we got to get some stuff on paper. We got to get this thing moving. So in my mind, I was like, okay, we need a logo. We need a name. So I buy Ben like the cheapest flight humanly possible from San Francisco to LA. Like the shittiest flight you could possibly fathom. I guess he had a layover in Las Vegas, even though that makes no sense in terms of geographically how to get to LA from San Francisco. And he gets his layover flight was a propeller plane. And I want to say it was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a propeller plane. And he's in the window seat next to the propeller. And he was very tired. And he took a selfie of himself to show that he was on his plane. And in the text message, I think it said something like, bro, look at this giant propeller. And it was him in the propeller out of his window before he was taking off. And at that moment, I was like, dude, I think you just named the company Giant Propeller. Like, that just sounds cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so instead of worrying about names, we were then worrying about logos.
Oh,
and so that's the story. And so we just stuck with it. It just felt right. We stuck with it. And then Mike, I think, chimed in and was like, because we propel brands, and we're like, oh my god, it all fits.
It
so
makes sense. It makes total sense.
Something like that. The story went something like that.
That's a great story, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's fun.
And Ben still works with us today. Like we're all still working together, years later. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how those things fall into place, and I think in a lot of ways. Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the professional in marketing. Sometimes the name is sort of secondary. I mean, who would have thought Apple, right?
Yeah.
Apple, a fruit, right?
Yeah.
It's what's behind the brand, right? That ultimately will make the brand. It's the quality of the work. It's your professionalism. It's your deliverables, right? It's being there, going 110%, right? And so then the brand name means something, right?
Yeah, I think you infuse meaning to any name through purpose. From a standpoint of, you could name something Lilac. You could just pick a name out of the air, Lilac. I don't know why that's the first thing I thought of.
There's nothing lilac over here.
There's nothing lilac around. And then it's about building the foundation. So maybe this is some marketing talk here. It's like when you have your idea and your vision of where you're going to add value to people and how you're going to add value to people, you have to make sure that you actually map all of that out. And sort of, when I say map it out, I mean literally map it out. There's a bunch of different exercises you can do. But the idea is that, and this is one of our company values, is success is built upon solid foundations. Mm-hmm. So you need to create the solid foundation and understand who you are, how you're going to speak, who your potential theoretical customers are, understand who those people are and how they behave, so that you can then make the name mean something through the actions that you're taking. Right. So a name is just anything until you give it meaning, right? Right. So I think a good brand figures out how to give not just it being the name meaning, but how to infuse meaning into everything that they do. Because what's the reason that you bought an Apple computer versus a Microsoft computer? Right. Well, I'm sure it's not because of the name.
Well, there's an emotional attachment to it, right? And so I would say that, in this case, I was exposed to personal computers through Apple at school, right? And I fell in love with it. Okay. And they were always easy to use and high quality. And then, when it was time for me to get one, and I thought I was going to get a laptop, it was too expensive for me. I couldn't afford it, right? Mm-hmm. So it became this emotional attachment, but there's more to it.
Almost like a desire.
Yes, it's almost like, and it stands for something, right? I mean, Apple has always stood for the creative types, right? And then the artists. Not that I'm an artist, but I like to think that I'm.
But it's like creative. If they're using it, then it must be good enough for what I'm doing.
Yeah. But there's been a million brands out there that have probably a cool name and a cool logo, but their product is really, really bad, right? And so. In your case, you were already thinking about the product and the client, what you wanted to deliver for the client. And
we thought about, in our case for Giant Propeller, and I don't know, I think it's just kind of comes natural. But we were thinking about the service and the value we would be providing long before the name. Right. So that by the moment that I got that text message and shared it with Mike and we had that conversation, it was like, the name was just, you could have picked any name out of a hat at that point because we knew what we were trying to do.
Right. And so that's always good for any type of professional, but also learning and development professionals to focus on what type of product do you want to deliver, what type of service do you want to deliver, what type of care are you going to provide the customer. Put all your passion into that first, and then the name will, I've had people that have come to me and say, well, Exitu, right? What does that mean? For me, it has a very special meaning. It's for me, right? It's Éxito is success, and U is university, right? So it's Éxito, Success University. For me, it's been the driving force for my career. But it's secondary, right? I mean, the primary focus of my career and my business is to deliver companies an experience where they can engage their employees and make them more skillful and be better, right? Because at the end of the day, it's going to be better for the company. So the name, right?
But it sounds to me like for the name, well, you already knew what value you wanted to bring to the table, and the name was you were putting two words together that had meaning to you and had a sentimental value to you, and that's the name of the business now. Yes, right. Yes. So that's cool. Yeah.
And also the branding for this podcast, right, which is the L&D Ninja podcast. I thought there's a lot of more formal podcasts already out there in the L&D space, and I wanted it to be sort of fun and laid back. Wear a hat.
I imagine those other podcasts probably take themselves very seriously.
Probably.
I don't know. I haven't seen.
Have you ever taken yourself? Do you take yourself very seriously? Or?
No. I feel like
I take my craft very seriously.
I take what I do seriously. I don't take. I think I'm probably one of the. I'm a clown, basically. I think that you have to. I take everything I do incredibly seriously, but I don't take myself too seriously.
Well, I don't know. do you think that allows you to be more creative? Just the fact that you're more. By the way, if you don't know this, you're gonna follow Jordan after, because I'm gonna leave all your links below. Okay, your Instagram, you're gonna find that Jordan is very talented.
Thanks,
you work as a DJ sometimes at home. You create your music.
I do a lot of weird stuff, man.
Yeah. Tell me, what are the kind of things that you do to stay creative and edgy and
I guess things that I find to be fun. I don't know how to. So music was at like me. So I'm a really bad DJ and really bad music producer, in my opinion, if you compare it to how good I am at other things in my life.
Sure.
But a few years back, when I was probably like, I don't know, working insane hours or whatever, someone asked me, and I forget who, they were like, hey, so like, what are you're such an interesting guy. What are your hobbies? And I was like, what are my hobbies, man? Yeah. I don't know. I couldn't list, I mean, other than like things with my family, with my girl and my kid, like, okay, yeah, but like hobbies. I was like, hobbies. Specifically, a hobby to me is like a craft or something else.
Sure.
And so many of my hobbies throughout my life have become my career, right? And so they're not really hobbies anymore because they're actually work, even though I love doing them, like video stuff, creative stuff. All this stuff is what I always wanted to do. And those were always my hobbies that I turned into my job. And now I'm left without hobbies. So, so I was like, well, all right, motorcycle riding. That is something I got into. And then I've always been, my grandfather was a violinist. I've always been inclined towards music. I was subjected to like 7 years of boys choir when I was a kid, and I hated it. I hated every moment of it. But I learned how to read music.
Sure.
I don't know how to read music anymore, to be honest with you. But I always was drawn to music, and my mom was one of her hobbies, and she would even get paid to do this. So she was actually like a singer and like an operatic singer as well.
Oh wow!
Is operatic a word? I don't know, but opera singer, whatever. And so there was always that in me, and I was like, you know what? I just want to teach myself how to play an instrument.
Yeah.
But also in Los Angeles, I was going out to a lot of like, I wouldn't say nightclubs. I was going out to a lot of lounges, and I really loved electronic music.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to teach myself to play electronic music, and that's going to be my hobby. So I sat down, picked up an instrument from scratch, and just started plugging away in my free time, and it got better, slightly better. It still kind of sucks, but no, I mean, it got to the point where like people were like, recently actually in Miami, when I moved to Miami a year ago, somebody had heard my stuff, and they're like, can I pay you to make me a track? I was like, oh, wow, you want to pay me to make you?
Oh, wow,
I was like,
really?
Okay. Yeah. So like somebody that's paid me, I officially have gotten paid to make someone an electronic dance music track, which is cool. I mean, and it's just a hobby. And I was like, I almost don't even want to charge you for it because I don't want to F up my hobby.
Yeah.
You know?
So, because I mean, so far you have a track record of making your hobbies,
like, do I want to F
work?
up my next hobby? Like, I even had this guy, somebody else I met that was like, hey, we want to fly you to like if you can play that thing live, we want to like fly you to Spain to play at a festival. And I was like, huh?
So are we going to see you in Ultra here in a few years? You're in Miami?
It's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. People who
see, I didn't know that about. I didn't know. I mean,
random stuff.
I've seen your posts, right? And
you just see me messing around. Like,
it's pretty good.
Thank you. But I'm always concerned that it's unprofessional. It's like, oh, this guy's doing all this serious stuff in business, and he's also like a DJ, or not even a DJ. He's making like. I have to almost like associate it with like an alternate ego or something, because I'm worried that clients would look at it and be like, this guy is not the professional guy. These are not the droids you're looking for. You know.
I don't know about that, because you're helping emerging brands, right, and companies, and so.
Or people would just be like, Jordan's smart and edgy. Like, that's the other version.
So
what
would be your stage name? DJ?
Oh, I would just make it my name, which is just Jordan Geographic.
Oh.
That's what I go by.
Okay.
But I don't go by that for music. I called myself that a long time. It was just an internet screen name. For like 10 plus years, 12 years. Because I like National Geographic. Yeah. I like reading National Geographic.
Yeah.
That's another weird hobby of mine. Anyway, yeah.
Oh my gosh, man.
I don't know. I don't want to depart from like smart shit that the people listening can benefit from.
No. It makes it makes sense, because again, I think that at least in my opinion, I become very creative when I detach myself from the actual work. You know, you have to.
I think you have to.
You have to pull back.
I think you have to.
And do something outside of what you're doing, and that's where oftentimes I find inspiration, right? I find an idea will pop up, right?
Well, I think that's key. You have to take yourself out of the environment Because creativity doesn't come from captivity.
Right.
Creativity
comes. That's a good one.
Creativity comes from, in my opinion, the places you're not expecting it to be.
Yeah.
And to be fair, there are times when I'm sitting there making music, as just one singular example, and it's almost like I put myself in a trance because I'm not thinking about anything other than just making sounds that sound cool. And I start thinking about business while I'm doing it, and it's weird. And so then the creativity comes. Like a lot of people say, "Oh, my most creative moment's in the shower." Have you ever heard of anyone say that?
Yeah, I would.
And I'm pretty sure that's just because they're in a sensory experience, and they're detached from the seriousness, right?
Or you can be out in nature, right? Like
nature,
Like I've gone for long walks.
Exactly.
We live very close to the bay here in Miami, and so. Boy, I mean, I've gotten a lot of ideas just by being out there and looking at the waves, right, and feeling the breeze. Now, let me ask you this, because you were in LA, in Silicon Valley. Now you're in Miami. Mm-hmm. Those are, like, very different.
They are.
Right?
They are.
And so how have you made that adjustment? Are you finding new inspiration here in the 305?
For sure.
Are you...
That's such an easy answer, man. Like... people ask me this question a lot because people are shocked that I moved to Miami.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, you were a Cali boy. I couldn't imagine you ever living anywhere other than like California."
Yeah.
Clients, friends, colleagues, whatever. Everybody's like, "Whoa, you just up and moved to Miami one day." And I think that the answer to that is, I don't know how much people know, but there's a dog park outside of literally outside of Reggie's place. Right. And I live nearby too. And at that dog park,
40 stories down.
40 stories down. Yeah, I mean, don't just walk off the balcony. That wouldn't be good. That's not the right way to the dog
I've been
park.
playing in the metaverse. You can do that in the metaverse.
make sure you don't mix that up with reality, man. But okay, so at that dog park, I've probably met and made more friends in 7 months of living in Miami than 7 years.
Well, that's how you and I met.
Exactly. So testament to that. That's how I met you. That's how I met the person I sold that musical track to. That's how I met 3 friends that I hang out with almost every weekend. That's how I've had multiple business meetings as a result of a silly dog park, right? Yeah. But I think the dog park is emblematic right now of the energy that's in Miami, right? Yeah. Because everywhere I go in my day, I will meet someone that's interesting doing something interesting. Yeah. And I'm not saying that's not true for California. Those things still exist, but I think that my move here was really frictionless because I've been fortunate to have met a lot of really cool people right away. Yeah. And it was required much less effort than Los Angeles. Los Angeles is famous for people not following through with their promises, even if that promise is to go get coffee. Huh. Famous for it. Yeah. I really like living here. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because that's how
it's made me more creative. It's made me more inspired. Yeah.
Have you been able to tap into the emerging brands here, emerging companies here in Miami?
A few.
Okay. Or are you still dealing primarily with companies out of California?
Actually, it's funny, we've never really restricted ourselves to a geographic location. Like, if you look at our client base, like if you look at our client base, I don't know, I would say maybe 30% are in California.
Is that right?
They're all over the place. But here, I've actually, I flew to Tampa a few weeks back to speak at at the time, a fairly random, like, networking event, right? Okay. And I met this guy, good guy, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, I'd like to invite you to speak at my thing. It's called Life Ignited." Excuse me. And so I flew to Tampa, spoke at this networking event. Like, honestly, there might have been 35 people in the audience, right? But the thing that I noticed is I was like, man, I hope I don't bore people. And so I tried to make it funny. I tried to make it a good time, you know? And it did, and it clicked, and everybody in the audience...
You can't bore anybody, Jordan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Afterwards, like, every person was, like, so captivated by it that they were all coming up to me, and we all kind of, like, made friends, and we all went to a bar, several bars, as a group. Like, people were just kind of, like, afterwards, like, late into the evening, and then one of the guys there was like, "Dude, I just wanted to say I saw your presentation. I have a business, and all the things you were talking about are exactly what I think I need right now." Wow. And he was like, "I would like to be your client." And so from one interaction, I have a new client, and he's a fantastic client. These guys, they're called Pulse app, and it's a connections and networking app. It's very cool. You should check it out. And they're a client of ours, and we're working on the fundamental foundation of their business right now. The success starts with a solid foundation.
Absolutely.
And then we're building out the marketing plan. So like that is a new emerging brand client that I earned here, and like they're a great group. And so I couldn't be happier. Like stuff like that is it's great when stuff like that happens.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I remember, I mean, I was walking Jordy. So right, so this is how Jordan and I got connected. So I started calling my dog Jordy, and
in the dog park.
In the dog park, and Jordy, Jordan turns around and that's how we connected. He says, well, my parents and my family, my friends call me Jordy.
Yeah, I mean, most people have called me like Jordy pretty much my whole life. Yeah. Like my mom calls me Jordy. Right?
Yeah, I still can't bring myself to calling you Jordy, by the way.
No, that's okay. Jordan. It's a rite of passage in our friendship. If you want to call me, but the problem is both me and your dog are both going to go like this. We're both going to go.
The funny thing is that that we struck a conversation, and you were new in the area. I think you had only been here for a few weeks.
I think a few days.
Probably, right? You had just bought your place, and you were making that transition, and I was. I hadn't launched my business yet. So
you were one of the first people I met in Miami.
Is that right?
Like that I had a conversation with and had...
Hopefully it wasn't a disappointment.
No, it's great.
Okay. All right. Good. Good.
Afterwards, you're just like holding steak up in the air, and you were like, Jordy, and I was jumping up and down.
Yeah. Well, it's you never know what's going to happen out of those conversations, right? In those connections, and so you just got to put yourself out there. And again, so I think we've learned a lot from you today, Jordan. I mean, you have to sometimes transition and shift when the need arises, and you feel like you're stagnant, and you can offer more, and that's what you did. That moving from your previous company to your new company. Don't worry about the name right off the bat, right? I mean, worry about the vision. What is it that you want to deliver? And then that sort of becomes your calling card.
Yeah.
We learn about, setting aside ego, right? You're going to have to partner with people, and sometimes they're going to be, forget about titles, and, that's not important.
Yeah.
But if you can work together, right?
Yeah, if you're on the same team.
There's great synergy and partnership, because that wasn't happening in your previous company. Right? You had different visions.
Correct.
And I think that, if you do that, then good things are going to happen, right? And it takes time, right? I mean, you would probably say, I mean, I'm experiencing that firsthand, right? It's not easy. It takes time to build that sort of that reputation and that brand.
Yeah, definitely.
And then, hopefully good things come out of that.
Well, I think good things take time, right?
Let me ask you this, since we have you here.
Ask if there's anything else that you want to ask.
I know that you're pressed for time, so but I do appreciate...
I'm good for a little bit more.
I appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you being here. But let me ask you this. COVID has changed things forever.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
You one of the things that I found very interesting is that you and your business partner now manage your entire operation remotely, right? Is everybody remote?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah?
Essentially, everyone is remote, but everyone has the ability to meet with their local. Like, for example, our LA employees.
So you have an LA hub, you have a Miami hub?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working. We operate out of WeWork offices in those places now.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and so basically we have the ability for our employees to go into those places, and also we once a month have an in-person meetup opportunity.
Got it.
For the local areas.
Got it.
And then once a quarter we all meet up in person.
Perfect. So, because you just answered my question. I was going to ask you what sort of things do you, now that you're managing people who are remote, how do you manage engagement and making sure that culture, right? The culture of the
really
your company.
Important.
Yeah.
And I got to give a big sort of shout out to Mike, my partner, for really spearheading this and bringing in our people ops guy at GP. So we brought on a fantastic, people ops person. His name's Brian Carpenter. Really excellent guy. Like, if you're talking about HR, you couldn't find a cooler, more humble, engaged, and genuine person to align with the company. I truly mean that. And so Mike was like, look, with this shift to full remote, because we were always like the operation that was like, if you're not in LA at 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., you're not working here, right?
Yeah.
But that changed, right? And we had to adapt. And so one of Mike's top priorities for the company was how do we build a culture and an environment in these remote times. Yeah. And so we spent a lot of time, and Brian and he had spent a lot of time figuring out the way that we want to do this. And we actually made it a goal. We want to lead the way culture feels in a remote environment. And so we have different ways of doing that, but obviously we're all operating through Slack in terms of a communication tool.
Sure.
We have one-on-one schedules. We have fun environments within Slack, something called Culture Hub, where we're always just firing off stuff, keeping connected.
Sure.
We spend a lot of time at my company, just because we're remote. It's not like people are engaging on video chats with each other like literally all hours of the day.
Sure.
With clients, with themselves, with their groups, with their co-workers.
Yeah.
But we have found actually by not mandating people be in office, people really like that.
Yeah.
And we are working to make it a place that people are proud to work at. And I think that we're doing a really good job as far as the remote part is concerned. Yeah.
I would think that it must have been.
We all feel like a team still, man. This is such a blessing, right?
And here's my here's why why I'm pressing on this is because usually creative types, right? If you're always, at least what I have in my mind was when a creative team is working together, they're all in the same room together, right? And there's pots of coffee and maybe some alcoholic beverages, whatever,
for sure,
right?
For sure.
And sticky notes all over the place, right? That cannot happen, it can't happen to that extent working remote. But you guys have made it work.
Yep.
That's great to hear that.
And we still give people, like, let's say there's a critical client moment that requires that we all think, it would benefit most from being in person for this.
Sure.
Like we have a new client, fairly new client called Lulu's. Lulu's AB, in fact. They're a jewelry manufacturer and piercing company based out of Los Angeles. And for one of our exercises with them, we're like, you know what? This particular exercise is going to be really beneficial if everyone's in person.
Yeah.
So we're like, cool, where should we meet? Turns out we spoke to them. We met at their shop in their environment, and we did everything we needed there.
Wow.
But before, that would have been a different vibe, a different feel. They would have come to our office. It would have been it's actually more natural to do it in person when it's right to do it in person.
Yeah, and to go to them. I mean, to go to them.
Yeah, when it's truly the right moment. Because come on, I think we can all admit there are moments when you work in an office, if you've worked in an office in your past, where you're like, you know what, I'm sitting here right now. This doesn't feel like the most productive use, or I'm not being as productive as I could be.
Sure.
So there's a balance.
Yeah,
there's a balance between that, for sure.
That's great to hear that your company has, certainly embraced that balance, right? Of we meet in person when we need to meet in person, but we're still gonna keep culture alive, even though we're all in different parts of the country.
Yeah, and I would add one more thing to that actually, which I think that one of the things that COVID taught us, among many of the things that COVID probably taught us, I think there were a lot of people who ended up, because of working from home, were around their families more than they would have been if they were at their office. Yeah. So for me, I think the ability for people to choose where they want to work from and to be around their family, if that's what they choose, is a really big benefit.
Yeah, for sure.
And then if they need to escape the home, because there's the other version of that is like, man, you're trapped and there's a lot of noises going on and kids are everywhere, or you need some space. Well, then go to the office. Find another place to work.
Or I send the other Jordy to the other room.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Get out of here.
Or it's like, go work at that coffee shop. Don't feel like it's a negative thing to work in a space. In fact, creative people, it's funny that you say that this traditional creative is people putting sticky notes and having a beer or whatever in a room. There's some truth to that, but then there's also some truth to the fact that, like, remember, creativity doesn't come from captivity.
That's true. Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna use that one, by the way. You're gonna see that.
I definitely made that up on their podcast.
I'm gonna give you credit for that, for sure.
So
now, what do you see happening in any cutting edge stuff that you're seeing in marketing, and then maybe of course at a high level, but maybe in a personal. I mean, what can we L&D professionals, entrepreneurs do to, and look, I know that you've gone over.
That's cool. It's cool.
But maybe a couple of nuggets. Okay. Yeah. Hey, pay attention after you've paid attention to your service and your product and making sure that you're giving it your all there. These are some things that you can do. to brand yourself or to get your name out there?
Well, I'll use you as a really good example.
Okay.
I think the fact that you created this podcast and that you're getting people to rally around it and to listen to it, I think that, there's this saying that everybody's been using forever that like content is king, right? Which is true. But I think that we often, well, maybe not so much now, but we were overthinking content before, right? Content can be as simple as you in your face and having a conversation like this, or content can be as simple, like Gary Vee is an excellent example of this. Like that dude films everything he does, right?
Yeah.
And then he leverages it as content and then people consume it. But definitely for anybody that's little out there, I think there are so many shiny toys in marketing out there. This is my warning. There are so many shiny toys and technology platforms and plugins for Shopify and all these different things that you could easily...
It's complicated after a while.
It gets complicated. It's a lot of tech overhead. And then you think like, oh, this is that silver bullet or this is that thing that's going to solve it. Those are tools in a tool chest to help you build the building. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you're the architect. Yeah. And you need to be out there talking as much as possible, and especially if you're small, and bringing people into your house, right? And so literally, right? No, in this case, literally. So you doing that, I think, it's a perfect example, and that just means talk about what you're doing. Get people interested in what you're doing. Yeah. Have a million conversations. Like the baseline, if you don't have a lot of money for marketing, have a million conversations about what you're doing, and let the people who find it genuinely interesting gravitate towards you. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Hey, can I bring you back? Yeah, of course. Anytime. I'm always around. I've enjoyed it. Always great to talk to you, Jordan. I learn so much from you every time I meet you. Thank you. And so all the best as you continue to grow your business here. I know that you're going to be doing some great things, and I can't wait to see what's in store for you, man. Definitely. I really appreciate you having me on. One thing that I'd like to say to anybody that's still listening is, if you are working through a business or any kind of marketing problem or something that you're up against and you want a sounding board, I'm a normal guy that you can just hit up and ask a question. I mean, that. Like we talk, we chat. Don't be a stranger. And sometimes he buys you a cup of coffee even though you're the one asking. True. Right? I mean that's happened with me. I invited him because I wanted to pick your brain, and then he ended up buying coffee for me. So that was a great deal. Jordan, thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. This was a phenomenal conversation. I learned so much from Jordan every time I meet with him, and so I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the content, please share, like, subscribe, comment. Throw me a smoke signal. I like that one. And do whatever you have to do in order to spread the word. And I'll see you next time. So take care. Yeah, thanks again, Reggie. Thanks, everybody.